Because families play such an important role in the success of our relationships and our marriages, I've asked a good friend of mine, Ruth O'Donnell, who's also a family psychotherapist, to join me today to tell us a little bit more about how our families affect our perception of relationships and of marriage. Ruth, thank you for joining us, first of all. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about when a couple joins and becomes, gets into a stable relationship, a long-term relationship. They're almost bringing two families together. What should the average couple be aware of when it comes to bringing two families together?
I suppose awareness doesn't happen immediately. It grows, and obviously when two people come together in a relationship, they are coming from two other sets of parents, and they would have been influenced very much by how they have been parented. Their experiences in childhood got to do with schooling, got to do with making friends, got to do with how they manage their emotions, got to do with perhaps, maybe the spiritual beliefs of both sets of parents. How they learn to deal with difficulties, how they learn to deal with strong emotions, and I suppose how they learn to be a person in their own right.
That sounds like a huge amount of influences, actually. I mean, is there any area of our lives that isn't really affected by our families, or do our families play it sounds like they play a huge role in determining who we are?
Yes, I think so. Very early on, because I suppose it's because of the way that we're made and the way that we're formed, that we're very influenced by who looks after us very early on in life. And we're influenced too by the experiences we have. And now that we know so much about from neurophysiology and the neurosciences, we're more aware of what happens and what memories, say, trigger in the brain, or emotions, and those kind of secretions that trigger, certain behaviour, some good, maybe some bad. So we're learning all the time. But I don't think you become aware of what happens, I think, or as much baggage as you carry, maybe until something goes wrong. And there's also kind of where you're placed in society. Like you could be born into a very poor background where things are, tight, or things are always a struggle both for parents and the children. You could be born into a very comfortable background where, the expectations for your life are already set maybe before you're born. So no matter what strata you come into, there are certain things there that are going to influence you, that sometimes over and above your parents, like a cultural thing. Okay, so culture is a major player, I suppose, in terms of determining who we are as well. Yes.
Do you find that people who experience difficult relationships, that in their childhoods there were significant life events that might have predetermined them experiencing a difficulty in their current relationships?
I'd have to say yes, but my caveat would be that we tend to remember things, like if something happens as we have an experience,
sure,
we tend to remember the emotion attached to that experience and then maybe link it to what maybe happened previously.
Okay.
So, and that's how we identify it or maybe make sense of it.
Does that mean then that if a couple is experiencing a difficulty in their relationship, that the answer or the solution to their difficulty might be, in their own individual childhoods, that something has happened, or they've experienced maybe a parent being so angry all the time that they've become kind of almost acclimatized to thinking that anger is now negative. So when their partner becomes angry, they start to get defensive and they don't know how to react. That kind of stuff.
Well, the short answer I would say to that is yes. But I would also say that everything that we feel and experience, it's also filtered through our personality and character. So like, say for example, I could have been very traumatized when I was, very small.
Sure.
But maybe I have the kind of personality that's extrovert and resilient, and I got over it, very well. So, but then there could be somebody else that may be sort of introverted and didn't get over it so well. So the same situation would affect both of those two scenarios, differently. So I think kind of the big thing to remember is to have an understanding of people's personality and also character.
And when it comes to trying to form a long-term successful relationship, what should the average person be knowledgeable of or aware of when it comes to trying to match up with their partner's family? I mean, is it possible to match up with your partner's family, or is it likely that you're going to be in conflict with them anyway? Or does that ever happen?
I don't think there can be a clear answer to that.
Okay.
I suppose what I would say, I think it's more important for the couple or the partners to work, something out to what suits their situation. But I would also say that you do that. I think it's very hard to go wrong if you are respectful and sensitive. Now that might mean that you have to give a little and take a little, but I think if you have that and work it out together, you'll have some chance of heading, I think, in the right direction.
What would you say to somebody who's watching this program and thinking, well, my in-laws are absolutely terrible, and no matter how much respect I give them, they don't seem to like me? What should that person do in this situation?
Well, again, the couple, I think, would come up with some form of solution.
So the couple have to work together to try and make that situation work?
I think they work together, yeah.
Isn't it the case that the person who is having difficulty with their in-laws may often feel that they're not being supported enough by their partner? And is that where the problem comes in sometimes?
Well, that can be. But then it becomes, say, like a couple issue. And again, I suppose the strength of the couple is the ability to actually work something out.
Okay.
And to work it out in a respectful and sensitive way. But it also might mean that if a person is genuinely disliked, and both partners are aware of that, well then what do they do to protect each other as a unit?
Okay.
Because that, their primary focus is their commitment to each other. That comes first. Then what happens after that is actually, well, to my mind, a couple decision.
So the couple need to put themselves first, and their both sets of families have to come second.
Yeah, but I'm saying that I don't mean that in a selfish way.
Sure.
I really mean it in a respectful and sensitive way, and it's also the art of what's possible.
What do you mean by the art of what's possible?
Well, sometimes you may not be able to do all you would like to do. And sometimes you may. So that's kind of like the ebb and flow, of life. And sometimes you might make a decision as a couple where your in-laws are actually not going to like you for it.
Okay.
But I think if it's done for the right reasons, insofar as you can, well, I think you have to live with that.
So if I can sum up what you've been saying to us, Ruth, family relationships with your in-laws, with your own families, can be difficult. They may have shaped you hugely, but that depending on your character, you might have been more resilient than somebody else with the same set of circumstances. And that perhaps even building resilience inside ourselves would be useful to manage all our relationships, both with our in-laws and with our own families. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yes, and I think too that I think a thing that's often overlooked is that when you actually come together as a couple or partners, you're not in suspended animation.
Sure.
You're actually growing and developing all the time.
Sure.
And also maybe reacting differently to experiences that come your way as a couple. So all the time you have that challenge of the relationship.
Okay. It sounds fascinating, and it sounds both challenging and inspirational, what you've said to us today. So Ruth, can I just thank you so much for being with us? It's much appreciated, and thank you again.
You're welcome.
Cheers.